So why don't we get started? All right, so welcome once again, everyone. This is a Clear Admit Deferred Enrollment MBA event. We're going to offer a whole host of insights into deferred enrollment programs. My name's Graham. I'm the co-founder of Clear Admit, and I'm going to moderate today's session. That's probably all you need to know about me, as I often like to say. What I really want to get into is introducing our guests, panelists today. So let's start with that. First up, we have Nicole Chen. She's a director for student recruitment and admissions at Chicago Booth. Welcome, Nicole. It's great to have you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Next up, we're going to also hear today from Susanna Matthews. She's an associate director of admissions at Columbia Business School. Welcome, Susanna.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We're also going to hear today from Hillary Samorjai, and she is a director of West Coast admissions at Harvard Business School. Welcome, Hillary.
Thank you so much. And I see we have a few people from the West Coast, so it's still morning for us, getting a jump start on the day.
Yeah, so it's like sort of have breakfast with Clear Admit and these great MBA programs this morning if you're on the West Coast. And last but not least, we're going to also hear today from Diana Economy, who's a senior admissions advisor over at the Yale School of Management in New Haven. Welcome, Diana.
Great. Thanks, Graham. Great to see you. And colleagues, great to see all of you too this morning. And welcome for all of you in the webinar today.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we have a handful of questions for our panelists. We're also going to let each of our panelists dive into some specific details about their program offering. And then at the end of the main session, which should last somewhere between 40 and 60 minutes, we're going to allow each of our panelists to jump into a breakout so that you can go in and ask them questions. And because of that, we won't really do any Q&A during the main part of the session. But each of our schools, each of our panelists will stick around, or their colleagues will join them and answer questions in these breakouts at the end. So stay tuned for that. As we get rolling here, I wanted to just give a kind of really brief overview, because I think for me, at least, when I went through this process many years ago, my understanding of an MBA was that it was something that, you graduated from university with your undergraduate degree, and then you went off into the world and worked anywhere from 2 to 5, 6 years, or maybe even more, and then you could apply to business school. And what's fascinating to me about these programs that have joined us today is that they all allow for a somewhat different path, and we're going to learn about the specifics. But essentially now there's a way to apply to business school while you're still an undergraduate and essentially lock in a seat in an MBA program. And it sort of differs. Some of the programs today have what we would call kind of a deferred enrollment program, where you apply now, get in, go off and work for anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 years, and then join the MBA. But at Yale, who's joining us today, have a program where you start immediately post MBA, so post undergrad. So we'll get into the details, but I just wanted to kind of put that framework out there, because I think for a long time, most people just assume that the MBA requires work experience, and that means you can't apply until you've worked. And what's amazing here is that you have this opportunity to kind of lock in a seat in advance. So let's get into some of the very specific questions that we have about these programs. And I want to first turn to Nicole from Chicago Booth. We're going to just sort of go alphabetically. But Nicole, I wondered if you could tackle our first question today, which really is like, why should someone consider a deferred or early access MBA? And like, what's the benefit of the student versus, say, the traditional route that I described earlier?
Yeah, no, thanks, Graham, for also setting that up in terms of just kind of highlighting what the landscape looks like. I do think, many of our programs and other top MBA programs do still see that there is value in our students having full-time work experience before they come to school. But this opportunity, right, like Graham said, allows you to lock in your seat a little bit earlier. I think we're seeing more and more students having already a clear idea earlier in their career, even during their undergrad, that they want to eventually pursue an MBA. And so I think we want to give the benefit of being able to see that path for yourself and apply early, while also still getting the benefits of work experience that you can bring to the full-time MBA program later on if that's something you want to do. So I think really I think students should consider a deferred or early access MBA if you are already fairly certain. It doesn't have to be like 100,000% sure you want an MBA, but if you do see that built into your potential future career in terms of whatever you want to achieve short-term, long-term, if you already have an idea that an MBA is going to be important for that in terms of either accelerating your trajectory or helping you pivot at some point, again, if you already kind of see that in your career vision, this is something that I think you should consider. It is just a really great, almost bonus opportunity to apply to one of our programs. It doesn't preclude you from applying if it doesn't work out with the deferred MBA program. It doesn't affect a decision of applying to the full-time program later on when the time is right for you then. Again, it really is almost just kind of this bonus opportunity. So it allows you to maybe, apply to schools while you're maybe already in school mode, you're already doing other applications for things. Maybe you're in studying mindset, so you can take a standardized test that you might need to submit for an application. So you can do all of these things while you're already kind of in school rather than having to think about it later on while you're also working a full-time job, thinking about how you're crafting this application. I think it also allows you, if you have kind of the security of an admission to a business school, be able to really focus on just the work that you're doing in that deferment period, really focus on growing in your career. Again, not having to necessarily think about how am I going to be applying for business school later on, but really finding a path in your career and pursuing things that are really interesting to you, maybe taking some risks because you're going to be going to business school a little bit further down the road. Tactically, there might be opportunities such as a application fee waiver. I know some schools offer that. So if you want to kind of avoid that versus a traditional MBA where there is usually an application fee waiver. And then another thing is you might have access to the school a little bit earlier on, ways to build a bit of a community before you even set foot on campus, whether it's with other students in deferment or opportunities to attend events or programming with the school. I think it varies depending on the program, but a way almost to get like a taste of things before, you're even a student. So again, I think mostly upsides, I think, in terms of applying to a different MBA program. Again, if you are fairly sure and have a vision for your career goals, short-term and long-term, that's something I think we'll talk about and what we're looking for. But I think a lot of benefits if this is something that you're already thinking about.
Yeah, great points, Nicole. I think you covered a ton of the bases here. And two things you said really jump out at me. The first is it's not like you can't apply to join an MBA program later if for some reason you don't get the admissions result you want for the deferred programs. So there's no sort of penalty to then, reapplying down the road. And the other thing you said that we've done a number of these panels over the years and that just keeps coming up over and over again is this idea that once you've locked in your spot and you go off to work, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of maybe taking risks or starting a company or doing things that, if you were still kind of thinking about applying to business school, you might be very conservative about, I don't want to, try something and fail or, take a risk in this, kind of career move that might look bad on my application profile when I then go to apply to business school. So I think there's a lot of flexibility and room for risk taking that you kind of mentioned. So terrific response. We have another question, which I want to turn to Susanna for. So our next question is, where is it? Here we go. Susanna, I think one thing that's challenging is that because people know that MBA programs have historically been, aligned around, you work and then you apply, there's some confusion or a need for better understanding about how you all go about assessing candidates when they're applying as undergraduates. So, what does someone who's competitive for your program look like, given that they haven't worked full time, presumably? So they're a little bit different, and they haven't even necessarily finished university, right? Most of them applying are going to be seniors. I think some of you do allow for folks to apply if they've started a master's degree right after undergrad and are, but regardless, no one's worked full time for the most part. So, yeah, what are you guys looking for?
Yes, I think that as a whole, when I think about people who are applying to business school, in that early stage of life post-grad, is a level of intentionality with why you're going through this whole process. I think the way I like to think about it is what is the point of this whole exercise? Meaning, you don't have to exactly know what you're going to do down the future and down the road in the way that we would probably expect for someone who's applying to an MBA program the year before they arrive. but a little bit more about why this particular degree. I think we look for a level of forethought and understanding about what this degree can do for you. And there are many different master's programs that you can pursue that would assist in your, broadening your business education, but why specifically an MBA? And I think it's sometimes really hard to pinpoint to like a particular characteristic, specific to a school or specific to students who attend a particular school. But I think as a whole, generally having not only an understanding of what you're hoping to do, but also I think a genuine interest in the areas that you've pursued in undergrad or your master's program to date. I often am asked if there's something in particular people should be studying, or a particular internship they should have or something they should do. And the answer is no. We'd rather have you engage in the thing that you are most interested in and pursue those professional opportunities that you're most excited about, and use your time in school to understand why you might want this degree. So I think if you take the idea of, the hard numbers out of this, which I know we'll talk about later, it's really ensuring that you have an understanding of what this degree can do for you and why you want it, not why you think you should want it. Because I'm sure we've all read those applications where someone thinks that this is what they should be doing, versus folks who are more competitive are going to be the individuals who have an understanding as to why this is something they might want to do in the future.
Got it. And I think one thing you're mentioning that feels a bit of it's sort of a bit of a relief is this idea that you don't have to know exactly what you're going to be doing in the way, as you say, that someone who's applying to business school after 5 years of work experience might know specifically what that post MBA target is going to be. There's a little bit more room for exploration, I guess, at this earlier stage when you're applying at this point. I want to turn to Hillary at Harvard Business School and ask a question about. Here we go. When it comes to this sort of work experience that's going to take place in the deferred period for your program. So are there any like requirements about that? Because the idea is, they apply when they're a senior in university or maybe a first year in their master's or something, but they get in and then they have to work for a couple of years. And so is there, are there any requirements? And then also, like, do I need to be able to tell you when I'm applying to HBS 2+2 that I already know or have the job that I'm going to take post when I graduate? Or can I still be figuring that out?
Absolutely. Thanks. It's a great question. So to answer sort of the first part of, do I need to know my exact job when I am applying? The answer is no. You do not have to have a job lined up when you apply. And if you are admitted, we will absolutely check in with you and see what you are doing for your full-time professional work experience. But when you apply, you don't need to know. Now, sort of similar to what Susanna was talking about, that we want to have an understanding of what you're thinking about doing. My focus is, I've had a few internships in these areas. My focus, I'm looking for, I want to be in technology. I'm looking for roles in technology, or I have this deep interest in healthcare. That's what I'm looking at. There is an opportunity for you to fill out a section where you share your your pre-MBA role, and you can share what you're thinking about. Now, some people do happen to have jobs. That is absolutely fine. You put that in there and you share more about why you're pursuing that role. But I want to be perfectly clear that you do not need to have a job lined up when you are applying to these MBA programs. But we are looking for you to have full-time professional work experience when you do land your role, but it can be any industry, any company, and the role doesn't need to be at any particular level. The one thing I do want to just again reiterate, which is something that both Nicole and Graham talked about, is that these programs really offer you a lot of flexibility to take risks. And so we're hoping that you will see these programs as opportunities for you to pursue your passion in any industry, any function. So it's really up to you to do that and to see this as truly as an opportunity. And then in terms of length of time, I think we all have different parameters. So for us, you can work for 2, 3, or 4 years before you start. And one thing to clarify is that when you do apply, you don't need to know if you're going to be out for 2, 3, or 4 years. We will stay in touch with you. When you apply, you might think, oh, it's 2 years and then I'm going to come. But then after you've started your job and you realize, oh my goodness, I'm working on this product, it's not going to launch, and I need to be there when this product launches. So then maybe you push it to 3 years, or maybe it's 4 years. So we stay in touch with you, but just know when you apply, you don't need to know how long you will be out working.
Yeah, that's a really important point. So can I just get a show of hands? I think all of you require, well, I guess with the exception of Diana at Yale, do you guys require 2 years at minimum at Chicago, Columbia, and Harvard? Is there a maximum? It sounds like it's 4 at HBS. Isn't it 5 at Booth or CBS? It's 5 at Booth, and CBS is 5 as well. Okay, so I just wanted to underline that subtle difference. Diana, we'll talk a lot about Yale, but in your case, obviously candidates are going to come straight in, so they, they're not going to be having a pre-MBA work experience. But I wanted to turn to you now, Diana, and give you this sort of last roundtable question that we have, which is, what should people be doing? So I'm a senior in college right now, imagine, and I'm, wrapping up my fall semester soon. I know there are deadlines. Most of you have a spring deadline. I think in the case of Yale, there's actually a January deadline as well. So what should I be doing as I'm kind of getting ready if I decide that I want to take the plunge and apply to one of these programs?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Graham. I think there's 3 things that I think are important to consider doing when you're in your senior year and sort of in this pre-application phase. The first one is thinking about when you're going to plan to take the test, typically the GMAT or the GRE, and we can talk a little bit more about the choice around that and what you might select. But most of the programs that you're going to look at, if not all, are going to require one of those 2 tests. And so we're here in November, and you might want to start thinking about when a good time to take that test could be. And in fact, this holiday break that's coming up perhaps in December and January could be a moment when you choose to take that test. It is true that sometimes students take the test more than once. So if you plan for sort of on the sooner end, you'll get a chance to take it and then maybe get another chance to take a stab at it, perhaps around spring break or depending on the timing of your application. So really thinking about which test is going to make sense for you and when you plan to take it, I think is something that you could be doing right now. Another is to be taking a look at the schools that you're considering and what their policy is around the number of referrals and references that they're going to be looking at for you, referral letters. So typically schools, like some are looking for just professional recs, some like perhaps from an internship of sorts, some are looking for a rec from a professor, maybe also a rec from either work you've done on campus or an internship. So you want to take a look at what they're going to be looking at for those and who might be a good fit to offer those for you. It does take your recommender some time to write those. And so building that relationship, sort of being mindful of bringing them along maybe in the process or sitting down and talking with them here in the short term about what your plans are, so you're not dropping it on them at the last minute, and that you also have some mindfulness of what that's going to look like, who you're planning to reach out to. So the test, the recommendation letters, and then the last thing, and we've talked about this a little bit, is just this reflection that you can be doing right now. So we talked a little bit about, you focusing on the things that you're passionate about while you're in school. But in order to sort of reflect on why business school might make sense for you, there are resources that schools offer that you might find helpful. This could be student ambassadors. So at a minimum, you could go on a school's website, see which student ambassadors they have or what students they have featured. And I think you'll get a really good idea of who's at that school just through the lens of some of the students' stories and experiences that are being shared through their student ambassadors. You can take a look at class profiles to try to understand what a class profile might look like, with an understanding that's a snapshot in time of one particular class moment. You can take a look at employment reports. All schools publish employment reports that are going to show you where their recent class of graduates attended. So there's a decent number of things that you can do to reflect on what you want to do, but also to explore what the schools are all about, what they have to offer, and what their communities look like, even just from afar. Finally, I would say there are, of course, events that you can attend. And if you choose to do those, you are welcome to do whatever virtual or in-person events are available. And I think do those as they suit your availability and time frame and interests. So you may find different interests in the different styles of events that schools are offering that are going to give you additional perspective on what the opportunities are.
Got it. All right. 3 amazing tips. I expect nothing less, Diana, from you, given that you're a veteran in this space. I guess I would say um, the test is a really great piece of advice, because I know, for one, as someone who did not have the opportunity to apply for deferred, I had to take the GMAT exam after being out in the workforce for a couple of years, and I had forgotten everything that I had learned about math and grammar, et cetera, because I was not in the classroom anymore. So it's really useful to take these tests while you're still a student. And then similarly, I think the management of your recommendation letter writers is, yeah, you got to get out in front on that, because they're busy people and it can take time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move into the next sort of segment here for the presentation. And I do just want to remind everyone that our panelists are going to be taking questions at the end in individual school breakouts. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I wanted to just kind of go through each program here. And, actually, why don't we go in reverse alphabetical order, just to give everyone to not be biased by the alphabet. So we're going to stay with you, Diana. I just wondered if you could just kind of give us this lightning round, so just kind of a quick summary on these 3 questions, which is like, who can apply? What's one amazing thing about your program? And what sort of level of support do you provide to people while they're in the deferral period? Or in the case of Yale, there is that mandatory 1-year sort of internship in between years 1 and 2. So yeah, walk us through these questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Graham. Yes. So as you've alluded to, the Silver Scholars Program at Yale is a bit unique in that you do apply while you're an undergrad, but you begin the first year of your MBA program immediately. So you may be graduating this spring. And if you apply for the Silver Scholars Program and are accepted, you would be starting this September. So this coming fall. One of the big benefits of taking that first year of your academic experience is, as Graham mentioned, even with the test, you are fresh academically. You are ready to take these courses, and it's going to give you some of that foundational knowledge that's going to build upon your undergraduate experiences. We then do have a required internship of a year in length. And the big benefit there is that our career development office is going to help you source that or work on planning to try to get for that internship. So to have the power of a really strong career office behind you to find that internship, I think, is a big benefit of already being in the MBA and having access to that network. And then what you'll do is, after your internship, you'll return for your final year of coursework, which is largely electives. And a huge benefit, or maybe even one of the highlights of the experience in the MBA program, I believe, here at Yale SOM, is that you can take an unlimited number of courses outside of the business school. So you have the power of Yale University and the coursework here at Yale at your disposal during your elective timeframe. So what I mean by that is you could take courses at the business school, but you may also choose to take a course at the law school or public health, public policy. So a lot of opportunity for choice in what you choose to do after. In terms of the support, I mentioned the Career Development Office, and so we're going to begin working with you very soon. So I mentioned if you're graduating in, this spring, it's going to be as early as this coming summer that we're already going to be working with you on getting your resume ready, getting your career pitch together, and getting your plans together as it relates to your internship opportunity. I will tell you that the Silver Scholars, even though they tend to be a bit younger or earlier in their career, even as they're graduating from the MBA program, are landing in full-time opportunities that tend to be pretty similar to those that you'll see from a traditional full-time student who may have more work experience. So I think another benefit of the Silver Scholars Program is that you're going to be entering that next phase of your career once you're done with the program, perhaps a little bit earlier in your professional tenure. So we'll be here to support you both on the internship and the full-time side. Thanks, Graham.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, no, I appreciate you shedding light, since you guys are the, which one of these is not quite like the others. So it's very helpful for you to shed light on that. Let's see, we're going to go backwards. So Hillary, it's your turn over at Harvard Business School to tackle these questions for us.
Super, thank you. Okay, so eligible to apply to our program. So you will apply your senior year of college. Or if you're doing a continuous master's program, so for example, maybe you're doing a 4-in-1 program or a co-term program, you will apply during the end of your co-term program. We have one round for our 2+2, which is the application will be due in April. We will be sending out the dates. We will be releasing the application soon. But you will apply your senior year, or if you've done a continuous master's program, you're eligible for 2+2. One highlight of the student experience in our MBA program, many of you likely know that HBS is case method. And for those of you who want to learn more about this, we have a video inside the case method, which really shows it's our pedagogy. You put yourself in the shoes of the protagonist. What would I do in a given situation? And it's this iterative process that you do over 2 years, 500 cases where you get really good at decision making. And then finally, the support and community for admits. Once you are admitted, you will get in touch. You're able to be in touch with the other 2+2 admits, and there's also special programming opportunities to special programming with professors, and also social opportunities to get to know one another. And then once you decide when you matriculate, then you will be part of the regular cohort, and there are a lot of other activities and opportunities for you to get to know the bigger class as well.
All right, terrific. Yeah, and I do see we continue to get a few questions in the chat, and I just want to remind everyone you can, at the end of this main session, you'll have a chance to go and interact individually with our panelists and ask them your questions. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, thanks, Hillary, for walking us through. Let's turn to Susanna at Columbia Business School. Would love to hear your thoughts on these questions.
Yes, so starting with who is eligible. So you can apply if you are in the final year of a bachelor's degree program, or if you are in the final year of a master's program that you entered into right out of undergrad. So this could be an integrated master's, it could be a master's program at a completely different school, and it doesn't matter what the subject matter of said master's program is. It doesn't have to be something related to business, but the kind of key point here is that you need to have directly entered into that program right after you finished undergrad. In terms of what's the general highlight about the student experience, I think certainly the location of being in New York City is an integral part of the overall MBA experience, whether it be socially or personally, academically, professionally. I think that having the level of access that you have to a wide variety of industries and industry leaders, practitioners who are coming into the classroom and teaching some of our classes, that sort of level of access that comes along with being in a city like New York is really, I think, can make a difference in someone's overall experience. Around 50% of people will do in-semester internships during their time at CBS. So that is certainly, location is something that people are taking advantage of. And similarly, what was discussed previously in terms of support or community, we do provide opportunities for admitted students to be able to get to know each other via a Slack channel, via some virtual and occasionally in-person events. We also, sometimes when we're on the road in a particular city, we'll conduct deferred enrollment specific events as well. And then also in terms of more specifically support, myself and another colleague serve as direct touch points for folks who are in their deferral period. So any sort of questions, any sort of guidance that is needed, we are kind of your go-to people with that. And that's, I would say, one of the more enjoyable parts of my job, being able to chat with people and help them figure out what's next for them.
Yeah, this is another great benefit, I think, of deferred enrollment is that you're not alone when you're doing your work experience, or, if you're doing an internship in between the 2 years at Yale Silver Scholars, like you have the support that's there for you. When I was working before I went to business school, there was no one I could interact with that I knew I was going to then be in business school with later, or, or even turn to a career office, get advice. So I think that's a great feature of these programs. Nicole, you've been patient as we went backwards through the alphabet, but let's hear how this is all structured over at Booth.
Yeah, absolutely. So our Deferred MBA program is our Chicago Booth Scholars Program. That's the name. Our eligibility is similar to Columbia's. You have to either be in the final year of your undergraduate program to apply, or in the final year of a master's degree program that you entered into directly after undergrad. Yeah, whether it's 4+1 type of program or a separate master's program, just kind of the main goal is that there's not full-time work experience in between. So in the final year of either of those. I think a highlight for Booth and our MBA program is really, I think, the flexibility that our program offers. I think we really give our students the opportunity to design an MBA program that's right for them, depending on what they're hoping to achieve, how they're hoping to learn, grow personally, professionally. So wanting to give students that, autonomy and that empower them with that. So that starts with, the flexibility of our curriculum. It's really customizable. We really only have one required kind of leadership component of our curriculum, but there's not necessarily a set class structure that all students go through. So students are really able to create a curriculum that's right for them. So I think that's a huge benefit, depending on what already experience you're bringing into the MBA program and what you're hoping to do with your career. But that also expands to everything about the student experience, from extracurriculars to the community, how students are really forming those throughout their time. I think is a huge highlight of students, like I said, really being able to maximize their use of the 2 years in the full-time MBA program. Our kind of my answer to question 3 is similar, I think, to some of my colleagues in terms of we want to give all of our students in deferral in our Chicago Booth Scholars Program, they have opportunities to connect with one another while in deferment, and whether that's maybe in person, depending what city you're in, or virtually. We do offer some virtual programming every now and then, or maybe some in-person programming in your city to help people get to know each other and to continue some of that development. We want you to also be able to focus on your jobs, but feel connected to the school during that deferment period. And then we also have admission staff support who are going to be checking in with you throughout your deferment as you're figuring out what your next steps are in terms of your career trajectory and whenever you decide to come back to school.
Got it. Okay, excellent. Now, we did get a question that someone seems very anxious to have an answer to, that is just a general question, and I think it's an interesting point. There are some folks who finish their undergraduate degree in December, right? That happens. Someone goes a bit faster through their undergrad, or needs more time, whatever the case. They would still apply in the regular kind of deadline cycle, and it would be okay with you all that in theory they have this little gap of the spring before they would start school, I guess in theory before they would get word from you about your kind of decision, before they would start working. I was thinking of in the case of Yale, or before they start school. Is that, I'm seeing some nodding heads. Does anybody have a different kind of rule for December folks who are graduating in December? Or?
No,
No,
I
so it's
think
fine.
that in some cases on our websites, we'll provide like the time frame by which you need to have graduated in order to apply for this year. For example, like at CBS, it's you need to have graduated between September 1st, 2024 and August 31st, 2025, and you are eligible to
Okay.
apply this year.
That covers, yeah, that's great.
Yes, but we would understand that for any reason, if you graduate early, you might not, there might be a gap in time. That's understandable.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate you guys handling that one on the fly. Let's go. We have the next little segment, and then we'll get into the breakouts after this. But we had some questions that were submitted when people registered for this event. And so I've kind of grabbed a few of them that I thought were particularly interesting. And we'll start with you, Nicole. We'll go alphabetically again this time. So, Nicole, this person's wanting to know, I mean, they're a college senior. They don't yet have full-time work experience beyond, some internships. And they're just wondering, how do they craft their story and convey, this somewhat limited professional experience in essays or interviews? And I'm guessing this person has probably seen online or elsewhere that MBA applications are often a lot about work experience. And so this is a different path. And so they're just wondering, yeah, how can they, I'm guessing they're kind of wondering, like, how do they demonstrate leadership, or how do they show maturity, et cetera, through their application materials if they haven't had a full-time job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, first off, like we know that you're applying to this without full-time work experience. So, we are evaluating you on, similar standards to our full-time applicants, but understanding that you're at a different point in time. So we don't imagine that you're going to have the same level of experience. And so it's not necessarily comparing apples to apples. And so just feel confident that we know that you're coming in with less. That being said, I can also say, all of our programs evaluate applications in a holistic way. But what that means is that we're taking into account all the different parts of your application, all the different parts of understanding who you are when making this decision of whether to admit you into the program. So yes, work experience is kind of one piece of that. We want to understand what work experience you have had, whether it's internships or, other types of work experience, because I do think that informs, hopefully some of your goals and why you're pursuing an MBA. We do look at some of the parts related to academics because we want to make sure you'll be academically successful in any of our programs. So there's some of that. But then there's this whole section of everything else that is your life experience that you are bringing to this application. So even if you don't have work experience, you certainly have life experiences that you are bringing to this. So I think, as some of my colleagues have talked about, when you're thinking about applying to these programs, it does take some self-reflection of understanding, what have the experiences been that have gotten you to this point of your life that you've realized an MBA is right for you, whatever this next step in your career is right for you, and trying to understand that and pairing that with whatever life or personal experiences you have had that might also be informing that. So I think even if you don't have necessarily those years of work experience, there's a lot that's going on, whether that's extracurricular wise or, in personal life, that can still inform and make for a really rich story of what has, again, gotten you to this point. And we are not necessarily looking for specific, there's not specific definitions of like, yeah, what leadership is, what a progression in a certain career way looks like. A lot of people can contribute to their communities and demonstrate leadership in a lot of different ways. So we want to see how you've done that in ways that are interesting to you and what you're interested and passionate about, and how you have gotten followed those interests and passions, and again, how they've gotten you here.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of questions still popping in, and I know folks will chat with you all individually and get some of those questions answered. But from my experience, there are no, GPA cutoffs. It's not, that's not really how this works. I mean, the admissions teams are reviewing everyone's file in a holistic way. Yeah. So I do, just to go back to what you were talking about, Nicole. I think it's very possible that candidates have a really interesting kind of leadership or team experiences just via activities that they've engaged in on campus. I mean, maybe someone's part of a theater troupe, or a sports team, or I mean, whatever you're doing. It doesn't just have to be because it's business school. I have to use that one internship I had that was businessy when I'm writing my essays. Like, there are a lot of places that people could go to source interesting material. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. And then another thing that was coming up as well that I see here in the in the comments was people were asking, do you allow for business majors to apply to these programs? And my understanding is that anyone with any major could apply, whether you're art history or business. It's not, there's not a restriction there. I see again lots of nodding heads. Let's turn to Susanna. We have another question that was submitted by the audience in advance. So this one is about GPA. So this person's saying that they have a lower GPA. The best they could do, I guess, if they get straight A's here on out, is get it to a 3.5 out of 4. They're worried. They're saying, is there a chance I'll get accepted if I ace my GMAT, essays, and everything else? And I guess maybe you could speak to does the process or the assessment standards, like, do they vary at all between this deferred enrollment path versus the traditional kind of path into an MBA program?
Sure. So what has been discussed already in terms of the application process with holistic admission, I just want to echo that as well. And I certainly think there's an understanding of plenty of different reasons as to maybe why your GPA isn't where you would like it to be. And that can be for numerous reasons. There's always usually a section on an application where you can explain that if you'd like. But I think like what is important to highlight is it's one data point in the context of everything else. I've read applications where on paper people have particularly those strong showing in terms of the numbers, but not necessarily able to explain why they want an MBA or why they're doing why they're applying to this deferred MBA program. So I think that as difficult as it is, kind of understanding at a certain point what you can and can't control, and doing your best with the things that you can control, like was discussed earlier, spending your time doing research on a particular school, and really being able to articulate why you're doing this overall, and understanding that it, again, difficult, but try not to put too much pressure on yourself for one particular thing. It's really, again, just one piece of the puzzle. In terms of a different process with the MBA, I don't want to assume with my colleagues, but I'm going to slightly assume that you're deferred, or in the case of Silver Scholars is an entirely different application than the MBA program. They're two entirely different processes. And while deferred is an eventual kind of like different path to getting the ultimate same degree of an MBA, as we've discussed, you're all at a different point in your lives. You all have different things to talk about. And so it wouldn't make sense for people to, an admission officer to be comparing you in the context of an MBA pool, because to a degree, that's not the program that you're applying to at this point in time. So there might be different essay questions, there might be slightly different requirements. And so I think paying attention to those are important. And also realizing that you are not going to be evaluated against someone who has 6 years of professional work experience and who is applying to go to an MBA program the following year. It's just a very different process. Again, I don't want to assume that that's how my colleagues approach things, but I would imagine that maybe it might be something along those lines.
Okay. I did see a lot of nodding. So speak now or forever hold your peace if you disagree with what Susanna said. Diana, you wanted to say something?
The only thing I just want to add on quickly, because it is kind of a nuanced approach to being able to applying and to being able to start right away through the Silver Scholars program. So the application for the Silver Scholars candidates is actually as consistent as we can make it to our full-time MBA application, but there are some nuances, things like for Silver Scholars, we actually ask for 1 academic rec plus 1 professional rec, whereas in a traditional MBA program, you'll see that most will ask for just professional recs. So there is some nuance in terms of the way that we're evaluating those candidates. It is true that you're not being sort of compared against people that have a lot more experience than you do, but to the extent that the criteria are meaningful for us in building an MBA class, they're pretty consistent in terms of our interest in wanting to make sure you can handle the academics, making sure that your trajectory and impact that you're going to have is on point. But you are evaluated with other Silver Scholars candidates with the idea that the application is pretty consistent, almost nearly identical to the regular application.
And just adding on to that, our application is pretty consistent as well. Just to clarify that as well.
Okay. Hillary, I want to actually stay with you because we have a question for you that came in from the audience. And this one is, again, around work experience, but this person's kind of hinting at something that I was suggesting earlier, which is they're saying, look, I have limited work experience just through internships, presumably. And they'd imagine that extracurricular activities may hold more weight than they would for a traditional non-deferred candidate. In light of this, are there certain types of activities or leadership positions that you can pursue in undergrad that stand out more?
Thank you. So similar to what my colleagues have said, we take a holistic view. We're looking at everything. There's not one piece that is more important than others. And we are trying to admit a class of people who are going to be part of our community. And so are there certain activities or leadership positions that stand out more? There are not. What we'd like to see is that you are involved in activities that are of tremendous interest to you and that you're passionate about. And maybe, you started out in your first year and you were kind of dabbling in a bunch of different organizations, and then maybe you realized that a particular organization was really speaking to you, and that's where you chose to, make an impact. Maybe you like to work across multiple organizations, but it is helpful to us to see how you've invested in those communities or in those organizations, how you're trying to make an impact in certain ways. Maybe you are taking on leadership positions. Maybe you are, you stayed involved throughout your time in undergrad. It's really up to you. And we want to make sure that what you've decided to spend your time. I mean, look, college is hard. The academics are rigorous. But that it's something that you care about and that you're eager to make an impact in whatever organization, community that you're engaged with. And when you apply to school, I think we've all sort of talked about there might be different recommendation requirements. We require 2. And one of those can certainly be from, it will be from one work experience, but the other can be if you've, deeply engaged in a community, you might want to have someone who writes you a recommendation from something that you've been very involved in. So the bottom line is, are there positions that stand out more, leadership activities? No. It's really sharing what you've been involved in and why, and how you've worked to make this community better.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. I often like to think of it as also just, what's the mark that you've left on the organizations you've been a part of, that sort of thing, which is exactly what you're underlining. Diana, we have one more question before we can get into our breakouts. And this one is, do MBA admissions officers have a preference between the GMAT and the GRE? Also, what should I be doing as a college junior to prepare to apply to these programs as a senior? Because I think there are some juniors joining us today, so that could be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this question is important to take in the context of sort of your broader academic profile and how schools think about that and how the test plays a role in that. So some of the questions in the chat are some of the things that we've mentioned as it relates to your academic trajectory in undergrad. What we're taking a look at is the rigor of the coursework that you've taken, how you've performed, the trajectory that the trajectory of your performance in your undergraduate experience. That doesn't mean that you have to be at a particular university or have studied something in particular. It's your unique situation as it relates to the type of coursework that you've taken and how you've performed. That coursework is also augmented by our understanding of your standardized tests, so either the GMAT or the GRE. And to answer this question more specifically, most schools do not have a preference between the GMAT or the GRE. So what I would say is I would probably try each of them to see which test suits you best. Some people sort of take to one over the other. And then make sure that you build in time to study, just as you would for your coursework, so that you've got a plan in place. And that plan is going to differ based on where you are with your tests. Some of you are really strong and sort of whizzes at standardized tests. This comes a little bit easier to you. Some of you maybe need a little bit more focused attention on one portion of the test or another. So making sure that you put a plan in place. There are various opportunities to study, either self-study, online tools and resources, or other coursework that you can choose to take if you wish to prepare for the GMAT or the GRE. And then some schools will also take a look at just maybe some of the work experiences you've had in your internship, or point to other attributes of your profile that might give them confidence of your ability to be successful in an academically and quantitatively rigorous environment. So maybe you are doing a particular internship that also lends some credibility to the your opportunity to contribute in the classroom. So it's across this academic profile that schools are going to take a look and gain confidence that you'll be likely to be successful in the classroom. So what you can do to be successful is A, be aware of what your academic profile offers. Where are there opportunities to strengthen? So this notion of, you're a junior right now, perhaps there's coursework that's going to help strengthen your quantitative profile. If you haven't taken a lot of quant courses, maybe that's something you consider in your final year of study. You may also choose to really focus on your academics to kind of boost your overall academic profile, that strength in your coursework and your performance in that coursework can help. And then your test is complementary to our understanding of your academic coursework and will, a higher test score helps give us confidence in your ability to be successful in the classroom, but it isn't an end all be all. There's no cutoff score. This is you scoring to your ability and sharing that with the committee who will be taking a look at these pieces holistically.
And I think you're making a good point. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like one of the things you're maybe suggesting, which you suggested at the beginning of our discussion today, is that getting the test out of the way might be a smart thing to do. And I'm thinking if someone's a junior, what a better way to spend the summer than working on your, GMAT or GRE. Not that that's fun, but it's something you could sort of tick off the list. So that could be really, really useful. I've learned a lot. I always feel like I just learned so much whenever we have such a great group of panelists. What I want to do next is we're going to have our panelists head backstage. We put the deadlines up, and I don't know, Hillary, you had mentioned, is this deadline announced yet for HBS?
I think it is. I haven't
Yeah,
looked
okay.
at our website, but that I'm sure you got that from
That's
the
probably
website.
right.
We're just releasing our
Okay.
application soon.
Sometime soon. Okay, so these are the deadlines, and I do want to also just mention Yale has a deadline, I think, in January as well. So just want to put that on people's radar as well. But most of the deadlines, you can apply in April. So I wanted people to know that that's out there. Obviously, you still have a little bit of time, but as you've probably learned today, there's a lot you could be doing. And with that, I did obviously just want to thank our panelists. We're going to have them jump backstage and into some breakout rooms. But yeah, Nicole, Susanna, Hillary, and Diana, really, really appreciate your time today, and hope you get some great questions from our attendees. Attendees, stay with me for 1 minute. We're going to just give our panelists a minute or two to take a breath and get them situated in their breakouts. But I did want to thank everyone who made time. I recognize that, whether you're on the West Coast of the United States, or I saw there are people in England and India, really means a lot to us that you're taking time out of your day to join us. While you're here, I did want to just mention there are a bunch of things you can do at clearadmit.com, which is our website. We have a podcast that comes out every week with great advice about applying to business school. You can share your profile on a tool that we have called ApplyWire and get free kind of feedback from folks on what your, sort of candidacy looks like. We have an archive on our website of interview questions that people have been asked at business schools. We list the school's essay questions with thoughts on how to approach. We don't actually ever share sample essays. We kind of think that's a really bad idea, but we offer kind of advice on how you might start thinking about essay questions that you get from a school. And obviously we have this very famous tool called Livewire on our website that is a real-time kind of feed of people's admissions outcomes. And you can see that on our site at clearadmit.com/livewire. One thing I just wanted to mention, one last thing, is that we're going to be doing this again, same time next week with a different set of schools. So we're going to be joined by Wharton, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, University of Virginia, Darden, and Berkeley Haas. Same time next week. Similar questions. We have some different audience questions, obviously, that we'll go through, but that should be really informative as well. So feel free to join us next week if you had fun this week. Again, thank you so much. What we're going to do now is open up the breakout rooms. I did want to mention, if you're joining on Zoom, you need to use the Zoom app, or you can't be on a browser if you want to be able to access the breakouts and bounce around. I think we have actually a note about that here on this slide. But the breakout rooms are open. And yeah, enjoy asking questions of our panelists today. And yeah, it's just been great to have you all with us, and appreciate your time once again.